Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's workshop. I'm Dr. Lakelyn Eichenberger, Home Instead's gerontologist and caregiving advocate. I'm so excited that you are joining me today. It's World Alzheimer's Day, September 21st, so it's a great day to be talking about the topic of brain health. And so I'm excited to dive into a lot of the great content in our workshop. Again, we've titled it Maintain Your Brain. We're going to focus on our brain health. So often we think about the health of the rest of our bodies, but we don't give our brains enough time and attention. And if you're a caregiver, meaning that you're caring for someone, maybe a loved one, family member, friend, you might be at a little bit higher risk of some cognitive decline later in life because of the realities of caregiving. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And again, we'll mainly be focusing on how everyone can reduce their risk of cognitive decline later in life, which is something we can do at any age. It's never too early and it's never too late. Like I said, I'm Dr. Lakelyn Eichenberger. I'm a gerontologist and caregiving advocate at Home Instead. You might be wondering, what is a gerontologist? Well, I study the aging across the lifespan. I look at all the different factors associated with aging and how it impacts us as we age. And then I also wear a caregiving advocate hat for both family caregivers and professional caregivers. The work that all of you do is so important, and so I am a champion for you, and I'm here today specifically to bring you education, tools, and resources. And we are recording today's webinar workshop, and so if you have to jump off early, no worries. If you want to go back and watch a portion of this later, or if you want to share it, the recording will be made available on our YouTube page. So be sure to like it, subscribe, so that way you follow all of the great content we put out at Home Instead. Let's take a few minutes to look at the objectives. It, again, seems like a lot. There's so much to cover. I could probably talk for hours on end, but I'll try to keep it to as close to an hour as I possibly can for us today. But we're going to talk about brain health across the lifespan. We're going to talk more about how caregiving might impact your brain health. We'll talk about the 6 key areas of brain health, and I'm going to have you do a little activity to kind of evaluate where you're at in your brain health journey in each of those 6 areas. Then, and that's what that brain gain action plan is all about. So we'll go through that, and then I'm going to wrap up with the signs of cognitive impairment and the next steps that you can take if you're noticing that in yourself or your loved one. So again, a lot of great content to cover, so let's dive into it. We're going to start again by talking about the importance of our brain health across the lifespan. Again, we focus on all other aspects of our health, but not always on our brain health. And we really do need to do a checkup from the neck up. I love that phrase, because our brain health is so important, especially as we age. It can impact our risk of cognitive decline, which could lead to the development of Alzheimer's disease or other types of dementia. And just to clear up those terms, dementia is an umbrella term that describes memory loss severe enough to impact your daily life. And there are different types of dementia. So for example, Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. That's why you hear it talked about so often. But there's Lewy body dementia, frontal temporal dementia, and mixed dementia. And so that's just a small overview on that difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease. But I wanted to share some interesting statistics on the prevalence, because we do see a growing prevalence of this disease here in the United States and worldwide. So currently in the US, about 6.7 million people are living with Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia. And it currently is the 6th leading cause of death. And if you look at this chart on the screen, you'll see that over the years, the prevalence is growing. And so again, we want to reduce our risk, so hopefully those numbers go down in the future, because we're seeing right now every 65 seconds someone develops Alzheimer's disease. So through the course of today's webinar, 60 more people will have developed the disease. We also know that people are concerned about their brain health. They're starting to think more about it. 44% of individuals in that age range of 50 to 64, they're reporting being worried about developing dementia. And so I'm excited that you're all here to learn more about your brain health and how you can reduce the risk. And so hopefully people are less fearful because they know they're taking action in their everyday life. And then for our friends joining us from Canada, I'm sure we have a few of you on the call, you have a large prevalence of dementia that's also growing, as you can see on the chart. Close to 600,000 Canadians are living with the disease, and 350 people are diagnosed every single day. And 56% of Canadians are concerned about being impacted by Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. So again, people are starting to think about it. If you ask someone what is kind of the most feared disease of growing older, a lot of people will say dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And so again, I want to empower each and every one of you to take the steps towards improving your brain health so you can reduce the risk of that later in life. And I mentioned that today is World Alzheimer's Day, so I would be remiss if I didn't include some worldwide statistics. Also, Alzheimer's Disease International released their World Alzheimer's Report today. You can go online and download it. It focuses on this very topic of reducing our risk. And the theme is never too early, never too late. So now you know how I got that little catchphrase for today's webinar. But worldwide, there are 55 million people living with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. So it is impacting people across the globe. And if we don't do anything about it, that number is expected to grow to 139 million by the year 2050. And because of what we're learning about the disease and the risk reduction kind of factors that we're going to go through today, we know that about 40% of all cases of dementia could be slowed or prevented in the future because of these risk reduction activities that we can engage in. So that's hopeful. That is great news. And I watched today's webinar that ADI put on about this report. A lot of encouraging information, a lot of great research and studies happening across the globe to further evaluate these risk reduction factors. So I think we're going to continue to learn more and more about how these small changes in our lives can make a big impact on our brain health. So you might be thinking, okay, she keeps talking about risk factors. What does that even mean and what are they? So for Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia, we know that age is the greatest risk factor. So as you get older, your risk for Alzheimer's increases simply because of age. But just because you get older, it doesn't mean you're going to develop dementia. It's not a normal part of aging. And that is a big myth that I want to bust today. It's not a normal part of aging. So if you're noticing changes, we're going to talk about those changes a little bit later on, that you seek out medical evaluation. Another factor that could increase your risk is genetics. If you have certain genes, and I won't go into all of that today, it does mean that you might be at a higher risk of developing dementia, but again, it doesn't guarantee that you will develop it. So some people choose to do some genetic testing to see if they have those genes, and if they do, they might be even more motivated to engage in these risk reduction activities. But again, doesn't mean that you're going to develop it. The next risk factor is family history. I get asked a lot, okay, my mom has Alzheimer's disease. Am I going to get it? And if you do have a parent or sibling that has Alzheimer's or another type of dementia, you might be at a higher risk, but it does not guarantee that you will get the disease. So sometimes, again, if you have a family member who has experienced Alzheimer's or another type of dementia, many caregivers say, that's my motivation to engage in these risk reduction activities so that I can hopefully delay or prevent myself from developing it. And then there's this whole category of modifiable risk factors that we're really going to dive into today. Because let's face it, we can't fix our age. We're all aging. We can't skip a birthday or go backwards. We really can't change our genetics at this point. And we can't change our family history. But things we can do are the 6 key factors of brain health that we're going to dive into in just a bit. But there are some additional health-related risk factors that are things that could be in our control or things we can seek out medical attention for to hopefully help properly manage. That's things like blood pressure. We want to make sure you have a healthy blood pressure or you're managing your blood pressure alongside your healthcare provider. Also, we know what's good for our heart is good for our brain. And so our cardiovascular health is so important in making sure that we are staying on top of any sort of cardiac related issue. Also, we know that if you're able to stop smoking or never start smoking or using tobacco in the first place, that can help to reduce your risk. Also, we want to be sure all chronic conditions are properly managed, especially diabetes. If we can prevent or properly manage diabetes, that can contribute to risk reduction. Also, obesity, prevention and control also can impact a person's brain health, so maintaining a healthy weight. And then also injury prevention. Next time you get on your bike, make sure you're wearing a helmet. Or if your kids are playing sports, make sure that they have the proper gear, because we want to avoid head injuries over the life course, because that could contribute to our brain health later in life. And a lot of people don't necessarily stop to think about that, but we want to keep our head as healthy as possible. And then also, one thing that's coming about in recent research is the connection between hearing loss and dementia. So if we're able to treat hearing loss with things like hearing aids, then it can hopefully help to reduce the risk of cognitive decline down the road in the person's aging journey. So again, these are health-related factors that we want to make sure we're working with our healthcare provider to stay on top of, again, so we can reduce our risk. Earlier, I mentioned that caregivers, those that provide care to others, they might be kind of at a higher risk due to a lot of those factors I just covered. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. And if you're a caregiver, throughout today's presentation, as I go through the areas of brain health, I'm going to give you specific tips on little things you can start doing to reduce your risk and to start engaging in these brain healthy habits, because I know caregivers are busy, their time is limited, and some of this might feel very overwhelming, but these little changes that you can make can go a long way. But let's first review why caregiving might create additional risk factors for cognitive decline. Well, first of all, if you're a caregiver, you're likely caring for a family member. And so that means you might have a family history of Alzheimer's or another type of dementia, just because, again, you're caring for maybe a parent or a sibling that has the disease. You also are likely experiencing increased stress and strain due to your caregiving role. And we know that one of the key factors of brain health, which we're going to go into, is managing our stress level. And so that could be, again, something else that contributes. We also know that caregivers are balancing so much. You might not only be caregiving, you might be raising your own children, you might be working, you might be trying to maintain a household or a social life. And so there's just so much demand on your time. And often caregivers put their own need on the back burner and they put themselves last. And so self-care, any type of self-care activity, especially those that maybe could be good for their brain health, they might feel like they don't have the time for it. So that could be another risk factor or contributor. And also, on that same vein, their health care often gets put on the back burner. They're likely to make sure that their loved one, the person they're caring for, gets to all of their doctor's appointments, takes all of their medications, but they might delay their own checkup which could be very detrimental to their health, especially if they have one of those chronic conditions we talked about earlier, diabetes or some sort of cardiovascular heart-related condition. So we want to make sure caregivers are staying on top of their own health. We also see caregivers impacted in the area of their sleep, exercise, and eating habits, which are some key components of brain health that we're going to jump into in just a bit. So that could be an impact. And then finally, often I hear caregivers talk about how isolating the role of a caregiver can be. And so isolation, it's not good for our brain health. We need social engagement and stimulation. And so caregivers, again, they might be, by way of the role of caregiving, more isolated or not able to get out and socialize as much as they would like to. So again, these are things that could contribute to a caregiver's brain health risks. But again, it's never too early or too late to start engaging in some of these brain health activities, which we're going to go over next. So I'm going to take a quick sip of water before we dive into these 6 key areas. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there is a worksheet that goes along with today's workshop. It's in the kind of notes area below this video. You can download that worksheet for the workshop. As I go through each of these 6 areas, I would challenge you to kind of rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, and there's room to do that on the worksheet, on how you think you're doing in terms of your brain health in each of these 6 areas. And then I'll also give us some time to reflect on it at the end of this particular section. But I mentioned it's never too early, it's never too late to start a brain healthy lifestyle. And actually on the webinar today that ADI, Alzheimer's Disease International, did, they talked about, wouldn't it be great if we could even start in grade schools teaching kids about brain healthy habits so that they grow up over their life course engaging in these activities. But at the same time, they said, it's never too late. Even if you have a diagnosis of dementia, you can still engage in these areas to perhaps prevent some of the progression, or delay the progression rather, of the disease. So again, no matter where you're at in life, these tips are going to benefit you. So what are they? Well, some of them might seem pretty obvious. We're always taught you should exercise regularly and eat right and get good sleep and be sure that you're relaxed. But also, we know that that's really important for your brain health too, and also the social connections that I mentioned, and continuing to engage our brain over the life course. It doesn't stop when we graduate from our educational institution. And then also managing stress. So I'm going to go through each area of brain health now and talk about why these are important to our brain health. And then for caregivers, I mentioned I had some quick tips for you. I'm going to share those in each of the sections. So first is to exercise regularly. Again, this is something that we hear a lot related to health. It's so good for our heart, which also means it's good for our brain. So we know that those that engage in movement, who exercise, they have a lower risk of developing cognitive decline. And again, it promotes that cardiovascular health. What's good for our heart is good for our brain. I know I'm repeating that a lot, but hopefully that means it's going to help it stick in our brains because we see so much benefit from exercise. It increases the blood flow to the brain. It reduces inflammation, and also it can lower our stress levels. I know on a stressful day, I love to get out for a walk, or for a while I was doing kickboxing, and it kind of felt good to punch the bag a little bit to reduce some of that stress. So there's a lot of different ways we can exercise, and the key is finding something you enjoy. At the recommendation of the American College of Sports Medicine, they say about 150 minutes of exercise per week. A moderate exercise is the best practice. So that's about 30 minutes, 5 days a week, but you could splice that up however it fits into your lifestyle. But again, you want to choose something that you enjoy, and also you want to switch it up a bit. So you can do aerobic activity, you can do strength training, and also balance exercises, stretching. All of those types of activities are really good for your brain health. And of course, before you start exercising, it's important to consult your healthcare provider just to be on the same page in terms of your exercise plan. But for caregivers, you might think, yeah, right, I don't even have time to brush my teeth, let alone exercise. Well, here's a few quick tips for you to consider. So first, you could start to incorporate just one 30-minute walk a week, and you could pair it with some socialization. You could invite a friend or a neighbor along. That way you're getting a double benefit. You're moving your body and you're socially engaging. You can also search YouTube or online for short videos. There's so many different workout videos online, whether it's that strength training, aerobic, or yoga, tai chi, and you could start with just, a 10 to 15 minute video a couple times a week to incorporate into your kind of daily routine, maybe when you have a short break. So again, it doesn't have to be these grand gestures of starting this elaborate workout plan. It can be little things that you can do to start to just move more. And maybe that's your goal. Maybe it's not the word exercise, maybe it's the word movement. Just get up and move more throughout the day. All right, so the next key to your brain health is eating right. Again, we all know that we're supposed to eat healthy, but a little bit more than that, we should be focusing on certain types of foods, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. We really should be thinking about eating right to fuel the brain. And there's a lot of research out there on the Mediterranean style diet and how it's so good for your brain. And this type of diet is rich in fish, whole grains, green, kind of leafy greens, olives, olive oil, and nuts. And again, that helps to reduce the risk of cognitive decline. And there's a lot of studies out there on that. Another name for this kind of diet is called the MIND diet. And so you can go out and do a little more research if you're interested. But I do want to point out that when it comes to nutrition, there's no silver bullet. There's not one food or one type of antioxidant drink that you can consume that's going to be the magic cure for brain health. It really is, just kind of overall engaging in a healthy diet. And so some things to consider is limiting red meat and foods high in saturated fat. So instead, choosing lean meats and oils like an olive oil, those could be easy substitutes for you in your diet that you could start to make. Also, we want to try to reduce our sugar intake, especially in store-bought sweets. As delicious as they are, it might be better to make something homemade or to choose something like a dark chocolate. It still gives you that sweet kind of craving that you're desiring, but it might be a little more conducive to your brain health. Some additional tips is adding fish to your diet or foods that are rich in omega-3s. Also, we all know we probably should eat more fruits and veggies. I love strawberries and blueberries. Berries are a great source of antioxidants that are great for your brain. Also incorporating more of those leafy greens. The greener the vegetable, the better. We also want to stick to more of those whole grains like oats, barley, and quinoa. And if you've not tried quinoa, it's kind of fun to incorporate into some recipes. Also, you can use spices to add flavor to your dishes, but they can also be great for your brain, like turmeric, cinnamon, and ginger. I love putting a little cinnamon in my morning latte, and I use an almond milk. Oh, it's so yummy. So there's little ways that you can incorporate these types of spices into foods that maybe you haven't considered before. And also hydration is so important. And I know that's not necessarily a food, but getting enough liquid throughout the day is good for our brain. So much of our body is made up of water. And so we want to be sure that our brain is well hydrated along with the rest of our body. You may have also read articles on different foods or beverages that are good for you. On that webinar earlier today, they said this year alone there was 50,000 articles in the media about how certain foods reduce your risk for Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. But as I mentioned, there's no one silver bullet. But we do know from some research that coffee has some benefits in moderation, along with green teas, and actually red wine in moderation might have some properties that are good for our brain health. So I'm not asking you to clean out your entire cupboard and start from scratch, but what are a few of these things that you can do? And for caregivers, here's just a couple quick tips to consider. I know, again, many of you are busy, so it might feel like a lot to get to the grocery store to do some healthy grocery shopping. So you could consider a delivery service to have those groceries brought to the house to save you some time. And you could also try to carve out about 30 minutes, maybe at the start of the week, to do some food prep and prepare in advance some healthy meals or snacks that you can grab on the go. Because again, I know how busy caregivers can be. So again, you don't have to start with grand gestures. It can be these little things, swapping out, olive oil instead of your vegetable oil. Those little things can really go a long way in your long-term brain health. Next is sleep and relaxation. Oh, how good do you feel after a good night's sleep? I know that I do. And there's really important reasons behind why we sleep in relation to our brain health. So it really does help our body recover. It helps us flush toxins out of our brain while we're sleeping. It helps our body to heal our tissues that might have been damaged. It actually also helps to consolidate and strengthen our memory, and it can improve our learning. I remember in college I would want to stay up all night cramming, and my mom would remind me, a good night's sleep is probably just as important, if not more, than cramming for that exam. You might actually end up doing better because it gives your brain time to rest before that big exam. And so, again, we need sleep for, again, a lot of these important reasons. And there is a myth that, if I don't get a lot of sleep during the week, that's okay, I'll just catch up on the weekends. That's actually not the most beneficial for our long-term brain health. And I have some 10 secrets for slumber that I'm going to go over here in just a few minutes, but it's actually better for us to get regular amounts of sleep on a day-to-day basis as opposed to trying to catch up on the weekend. So what are those 10 secrets to slumber? Well, the first is, like I just mentioned, scheduling a time to get up every day and a time to go to bed every day. Trying to get the same amount of sleep every night. And that means getting up around the same time even on the weekends, which can kind of sound like a bummer for those that like to sleep in, but it is really good for your brain. Also, prioritizing sleep and trying to create a sleep hygiene routine, which means, a routine at the end of the day that kind of helps you wind down. Also, if you can wake up to early morning light, that can be helpful, along with avoiding long daytime naps. A shorter nap is okay, but sleeping for extended period of time during the day might prevent you from a restful night's sleep. Also, exercise is good for sleep. If you exercise and you can get moving during the day, you'll likely sleep better at night. So I hope you can tell a lot of these things are interrelated. Socializing while exercising helps you sleep, so they all kind of work together. And then the number 5 tip is to watch what you eat and drink, especially in the hours leading up to bedtime. For me, I know that I can't really drink caffeine after about 1 or 2 p.m. Otherwise, I'm going to be up later than I want to. On the same vein, I know I can't eat a huge meal right before bedtime because, again, my body just can't really settle down and I can't get a good night's sleep. And so you're going to find what works best for you, but you might want to try to maybe limit the amount of liquid you drink, during the few hours leading up to bedtime, so you're not waking up every couple hours to use the restroom at night, those types of things. But again, everyone's body's a little different. Continuing on in our 10 secrets to slumber, you also want to review medications. For a lot of folks, the side effects of medication could be impacting sleep. And so that could be something to talk to your healthcare provider about. Also, creating the perfect environment for sleep can help you sleep even better. So making sure that it's cool, quiet, and dark. A lot of times, the ideal sleeping temperature can be anywhere from 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, which sounds really chilly, but for some reason, that is a great temperature for a good night's sleep. Also, getting it in a dark environment is important. We have so many pieces of technology in our lives that have kind of that ambient light, or even, your alarm clock has a little bit of light. And sometimes that can stimulate our brain, even when we're trying to shut it down and go to sleep. So as dark as we can create the room, the better. We also, again, along that same line, want to eliminate electronics. Try not to be on your cell phone or to watch TV in the hour leading up to bedtime. Again, it gives your brain time to kind of start to wind down, and the light from our electronics can do the opposite. Also, establishing those bedtime rituals can be important. I know I have a whole wash my face, brush my teeth kind of routine. In the winter months, I love to sip on a cup of hot tea before I do my bedtime routine, again, just to start to kind of wind things down. And then also, if you're experiencing poor sleep, it can be good to learn about, what could contribute to poor sleep. And again, talk to your healthcare provider if you are experiencing poor sleep. Because again, there are some health conditions that can impact your quality of sleep. For example, those with sleep apnea, they might benefit from a CPAP machine sleeping at night, those kinds of things. So it's important to discuss those with your healthcare provider. And for caregivers who think, gosh, it's just a blessing if I can get 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night, how can I even start to attempt these 10 tips here? Well, here's just a few quick starts that might be helpful. Maybe consider wearing an eye mask when you do go to sleep. So that way it blocks out all of that excess light and helps you really focus in on going to sleep. And maybe also you choose a time of night where you decide, okay, I'm going to the best of my ability to wind down every night at 10 p.m. And then you try to stick to that and make it kind of an ongoing part of your routine. So again, you could start with these small things and then build upon them later on as maybe you have a little more time and attention to put towards it. But again, sleep is important. And so I hope, again, as we're going through each of these areas, you're kind of thinking to yourself, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where am I at with my sleep? And we're going to go next into the next area of brain health, which is social connection. So we know that connecting with others is really good for our brain. And we can enjoy those close ties to family and friends as part of that social connection, and it's really good for our brain health. And when we think about kind of the socialization, it provides us with a lot of things. It provides us with support. It can help reduce our stress. It can help us combat depression, enhances our intellectual stimulation, and it can also help to reduce the risk of isolation, which is also very important. But sometimes people think, well, I have to have all of these friends to have all of these social connections. But it's really quality over quantity. So think about the type of connections that you want to engage with, the quality of those, and the purpose of your relationship. And so you might not need 20 friends. You might just need 2 really solid friends a couple really solid social interactions throughout your week that give you that sense of satisfaction and that important brain health benefit. So some tips on staying socially engaged: focus on those relationships that you enjoy most. All of us might have a friend or two or a family member that kind of drains us more than kind of lifts us up and makes us feel really good about ourselves. So focus on those relationships that you feel really good about. Also, maintain social connections with different age groups. That's where intergenerational relationships become so rich and rewarding. If you have, a multi-generational family, making sure the grandkids are interacting with the grandparents, or maybe if you don't have young people or young family members around, maybe there's young people in your neighborhood that you can interact with. Those intergenerational connections are so meaningful. Also look for opportunities to pass along your skills and your knowledge. It could be things like, teaching a younger family member how to cook a family favorite. It could be volunteering, or it could be things like tutoring or reading to younger children. Again, allowing you to pass on your knowledge and your skills and wisdom to the next generation can be a great way to socially connect. You can also try to challenge yourself, get out of your comfort zone a little, try out a new club, maybe a travel club or a book club, engage in maybe a new exercise class at your local YMCA or community center. Again, it could pair that social connection with exercise, and meet new people. But people aren't the only source of social connection. You can also love on your furry friends, your pets. People, again, aren't the only source of that social connection. Our pets can do wonders in terms of making us feel less isolated and alone. So don't be afraid to love on your pet or your neighbor's dog or your grandkid's dog or cat. It can be a great social benefit. And for those caregivers that might be thinking, I feel like I'm so isolated, I hardly have any time for friends, here's some tips for you. Maybe you start to just prioritize one social connection per week. And it could be, again, paired with another brain healthy activity, like going for a walk with a friend or sharing a brain healthy family meal together. It doesn't have to be, again, some elaborate, let's go out to dinner and make a reservation. It could be simple, coffee and connection, or a walk around the neighborhood with somebody in your life. So again, it doesn't have to be that grand gesture of social connection, but making sure you have that regularly is so, so important. And kind of along the same lines, we want to be sure we're continuing to engage our brains. We're never too old to keep learning. And so we need to stay curious, to learn new things, and keep our brains active. And this is really good for a lot of reasons. We know that a cognitive reserve develops over time through education and learning and curiosity. And a cognitive reserve means that maybe if one part of your brain starts to experience some challenges, another part of the brain might be able to compensate, tap into that cognitive reserve that's built up to help you continue with your everyday life. And so cognitive reserve is really important. We also know that those that have higher levels of education might be at a little bit lower risk of cognitive decline, but you don't have to go back to school to reduce your risk. You can engage your brain by continuing to learn in so many different ways. And the more networks you create through your brain, the better you will be, again, at managing any potential failure or decline that you'll face. So again, our brain is really an amazing organism, and it can kind of compensate in one area where another might be a little bit weaker. So we want to keep learning to keep our brain and our neural networks really strong. So ways you can do that: switch up your routine. Think about how much of our day-to-day life we do the same way every time. I just mentioned, my evening routine, same with my morning routine. I think I brush my teeth I do all my activities in pretty much the same order every day. try switching it up. Instead of washing my face first, maybe I'll brush my teeth first. Same with taking the same route to work or to run your errands. Maybe you take the scenic route one day a week just to switch things up. Or maybe you brush your teeth with your left hand instead of your right hand. Again, just to challenge your brain a little bit. You could also learn a new language. I know that sounds very ambitious, but we know that people that learn multiple languages, they are at a little bit, of a reduced risk for cognitive decline. You could also explore the arts. You can engage in painting or sculpting. You could pick up a new musical instrument, or simply just enjoy music, or start to dance with another person, or take a class in the arts. The arts are really good for our brain, and what's amazing is people that have developed dementia or Alzheimer's disease, the part of the brain, especially that involves music, seems to be unreached by the disease for some reason. So somebody who might not be very verbal, when you put on a song that they've known their whole life, they might light up and be able to sing every word. It's quite amazing and incredible. That would be a topic for another webinar, which maybe I'll do down the road. You could also, again, to keep your brain engaged, is you could continue to work. We see people that, they might retire, but then decide to go on for an encore career. Maybe they become a caregiver for us at home instead, or maybe they always wanted to work in a floral shop or a coffee shop, and they kind of pick up a part-time job. That ongoing work can be really good for their brain. Also, volunteering. You don't have to get paid to do it to still have the benefit. But volunteering maybe at your local art museum or your local music venue, or at a school, or at a pet shelter. There's a lot of different opportunities for volunteering that, again, get you that social connection, help you stay mentally engaged, learning new things. And a lot of times, some of it involves some movement too. So that, again, a great way to incorporate multiple of these brain healthy habits. Also, playing a variety of games can also keep your mind very active, but playing the same game every single day might not be as effective as trying to change it up a little bit. So maybe one day you play chess, one day you do a word find, the next day you do cards. Kind of shake it up a little bit. I know a lot of people are into Wordle right now. My mom and my grandpa actually play it every day. So again, switch it up. Find new things, new games that excite you. And you could also take a class online or at a community college. A lot of community colleges offer classes. You don't have to become a student. You can just kind of take a one-off class, or maybe even audit a class, which means you could take the class but not have to do the homework, which to me sounds kind of ideal. But again, caregivers, you might be thinking, this is too much. How can I easily engage in some of these activities? Well, that switching up your routine could be something super simple. It doesn't take you, or maybe it does take you a few more minutes out of your day. If you brush your teeth with your left hand instead of your right hand, it might take a little bit longer because it's not something you're doing automatic, but it could be something very little that you could do every day to challenge your brain. Or take a few minutes to learn about a topic that will help you in your caregiving. On the homeinstead.com website, we have so many great articles and resources on all types of caregiving related issues and challenges. So again, having some sort of educational outlet for learning about caregiving could really not only be good for your brain, but also help you in your caregiving journey. And then the final of our 6 brain healthy habits, we've reached the 6th one, is to manage stress. I know that, so much of our lives are busy, and we're going from here to there, and we have a lot of pressures. We're trying to balance a lot of roles, and so it can be easy to become overwhelmed and stressed. But the reason it is important to reduce our stress is because it can have a negative impact on the brain. The chronic stress we experience can do damage through cell death and shrinkage over time. The cortisol in our bodies, that stress hormone, it's not great for our brains. And so it can impact, our long-term memory and mood regulation. So we want to the best of our ability, manage our stress. So some tips to de-stress. Again, some of these might be a review, but try to focus on the present. I know I can be a worrywart from time to time, an anxious person by nature, so often I'm thinking 3 steps ahead. But when I find when I'm living in the present and being fully present, I'm not as stressed or anxious because I'm not thinking about what could go wrong or think about the future. And sometimes it's helpful to keep a list of what's bothering you. Sometimes to write it down gets it out of our brains and onto paper. And also, taking time to give your brain a break and just do some deep breathing. I think we could all use a few deep breaths right now. So let's all take one in together. Let it out. Doesn't that make you feel better? I can already feel my shoulders relax a little more. So, focus on your breathing. You can also practice saying no. I'm a people pleaser. I love to take up every opportunity I'm given, but sometimes it's too much, and it's okay to say no. And so sometimes we have to practice doing that. Sometimes we can also use imagery to help us. Maybe, when you're really stressed, you can kind of close your eyes and imagine yourself on the beach, the waves rushing in and out, kind of calms you. Or you could look at a photo of a favorite family vacation or a favorite memory that can kind of help bring you back to baseline. Also, thinking positively and focusing on gratitude can be a great way for us to de-stress a little bit or focus on the positive and not so much on the negative. I have a gratitude journal I write in every single day just to remind myself, okay, today, what can I be thankful for? What made today a good day? Even if it was only just like I had a really great cup of coffee. You could find one thing every day to be grateful for. Also allowing things to unfold naturally. Again, not making up stories in our head and getting really kind of caught up in that. Letting things unfold naturally. Taking time to just let it play out and then react can be helpful. And then also considering some exercise. Again, that cross benefit of, exercise can reduce stress. Tai Chi, yoga, those calming exercise activities not only are good for your body, but they can help you de-stress. And so caregivers, some last thoughts on tips for this particular area. You could just spend a few minutes starting your day with a positive mindset. Maybe you keep that gratitude journal where you write down just 1 to 2 things that you're grateful for that day, or you just take a minute to close your eyes and set a positive intention. Today I am going to focus on X. And make it a good day. Those little just moments where you can try to set your day up for success can really go a long way. And also, in moments when you're feeling overwhelmed, go back to that breath. And sometimes, you might feel like, I don't even have time to stop and pause. 3 breaths takes you less than a minute. And we all have probably 60 seconds to spare. So in those moments of stress, just stop, take those deep breaths. And hopefully that can help to reduce those cortisol levels that can impact your brain. All right, so now it's time to look at that action plan for our brain health. Again, if you haven't already downloaded it, the link is below this video in the notes. And so the first steps can really seem daunting. We just went over 6 big areas of our health that you could consider for taking next steps towards your brain health journey. But don't try to eat the whole elephant at once. We just take little bites at a time. Set goals that you think that are going to be achievable and try to stick to them for the next 21 days, because we know that's how long it takes to create a habit or to make a new one, or to break a habit or to make a new one. So start small. But again, this Brain Gain Action Plan is something that we have out there for you to download. It helps walk you through each of these 6 areas of brain health and helps you evaluate your health in each of these areas. And then on the back side of the sheet, there's an area for you to list out your brain drains, things you want to stop doing, and then your brain gains, things you want to start doing. So the brain drains, those are things that maybe are bad for your brain health that you want to stop, and the brain gains are those good things for your brain health that you want to start. So here's what the Brain Gain Action Plan looks like if you don't have the time right now to download it. So take a few minutes. I'll give you just a couple minutes to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How do you think that you're doing on regular exercise? I know for me, exercise is something that I've incorporated pretty consistently, so I think I'm doing pretty good. I give myself an 8. The next category is healthy eating. That's one area I think I do okay at. I could probably do better, so I'm probably at like a 6. Next is sleep and relaxation. I probably could do better in this category. I think I'm right in the middle, about a 5. I think I could improve my wind down routine, those kinds of things. The next is that social connection. I'm pretty social. I work a full-time job, so I'm in an office where I'm interacting. I'm able to get out and see my friends, so I think I'm doing pretty good, like a 10. I think that's like my top category. And then engaging your brain. I love to learn. I am preparing presentations like this. I'm always researching. And so that's one way I love to engage my brain, but I would really love to start to incorporate more of the arts. And so I probably give myself maybe a 7 because I have some room for improvement. And then managing stress, that's probably one area that I'm on the lower end, probably a 4 or 5. There's just a lot going on, a lot of demands in my life, so that's one area I would like to focus on. So again, as you're going through this worksheet on your own, you can kind of pull out, okay, what are some areas that I want to focus on first? And then maybe after those 21 days and you've created a new habit, pick one more new habit to engage in for the following 21 days. And then you can look back a year from now and see those little changes and how they've made an impact in your life. So I hope that those 6 don't feel too overwhelming because we've given you some very actionable things to do to make small steps towards your brain health. And again, why is this all important? It's to reduce our risk of cognitive decline. But I think it's also, while we talk about this conversation of brain health, it's so important to also talk about the signs and symptoms of cognitive decline so that if we are witnessing it in someone that we love or that we know or witnessing it in ourselves, we feel confident that, okay, this is something that's not normal. I need to seek medical attention for. I need to seek out a healthcare provider and get further evaluation, because we know that the earlier a diagnosis or detection can take place, the better. So let's go through these warning signs of cognitive impairment, and there are 10 of them. I'll go through them not too fast, hopefully, but I'll just touch on all of these. And the Alzheimer's Association on their website, they go into a lot of depth on each of these topics, so feel free to peruse their site for more insights. So, when we think about the 10 signs of dementia, we want to kind of differentiate cognitive decline that is kind of normal aging, which might be a slowing of like our thinking speed or our processing speed, from that of memory loss that is so severe that it impacts our daily life. And so, some of us, we might forget where we parked our car or forget the name of that person that lives down the street, but eventually we're able to recall where we parked our car or recall that name. That's just a normal part of getting older. But somebody that has cognitive decline, they might not ever remember where they parked their car. They might not ever remember that person's name. And so those are the types of things. If we're seeing those in a pattern, any of these signs as a pattern, then that's really cause for concern. Another is challenges with planning or problem solving. We see this sometimes show up if a person is still working. They might start to have more struggles at work, putting together the spreadsheet that their boss has asked for, or going through a planning process or a procedure that has been very familiar to them over time. That's along that same lines of number 3, difficulty completing those familiar tasks. If the person used to always cook this delicious recipe from memory, and then all of a sudden they started to need the paper version of the recipe, and then, even that's starting to taste off because, their memory's declining, they're not able to follow those steps. Again, that's a sign that something might be going on. Confusion with time and place can also happen for someone that's experiencing cognitive decline. Maybe you have taken the same route to work every day, but all of a sudden you find yourself very lost and turned around, very disoriented. Again, that might be a sign that there's something happening cognitively. And then trouble understanding visual images and spatial relations. Sometimes that's the area of the brain that gets impacted. So if you see the person, start to have balance issues or running into things, those could be signs for cognitive decline. Some additional signs, problems with words, speaking, or writing. Sometimes we get tripped up and we can't think of a word. Someone with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia, some sort of cognitive decline, they might try to substitute other words, or they might describe the word instead of saying it because they can't remember the word. Also, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace the steps. I mentioned the parked car. We could say the same about the keys. Maybe you find the keys in the freezer. You're not sure why they're there. It could be, that cognitive decline. Also, we see decreased or poor judgment as a sign or symptom of cognitive decline. Somebody all of a sudden is making some kind of strange decisions, maybe in the area of finance. We see that kind of as one area that's an early sign. You might need to look into, is there some cognitive decline happening? We also see a sign if a person is withdrawing from work or social situations. That person might start to notice in themselves the cognitive decline. And so instead of feeling embarrassed in front of others when they forget their words or they're not able to remember things, they just instead withdraw. And so that's obviously not good because we just talked about social connection and how important it is. And so if we're noticing that, it could be, again, a sign. And then changes in mood or personality. In some instances, I've heard like a husband and wife say, we almost got a divorce because I didn't know why he was experiencing changes in his mood and personality. But then we got a diagnosis of dementia, and it was like a weight lifted. We finally had an answer. And so, again, if you just see one of these signs one time, that might not be cause for concern. But if you are seeing them as a pattern over time, it's when we want to get this person to a healthcare provider for further evaluation, because it's so, so important to have early detection and diagnosis because it allows for planning. Regular cognitive screenings can also help to build a baseline of our cognition. And in the United States, if you're Medicare eligible, you are eligible for a cognitive screen at your annual Medicare wellness exam. So you could ask your physician to start doing that cognitive exam year over year. And that way, if you are starting to notice changes, you might also be able to track that in that annual exam and catch it early. Also, by going in for an evaluation, it can help to eliminate the possibility of it being something else. Sometimes it's not dementia. It could be something like a urinary tract infection, a UTI that's causing the cognitive issues, or maybe it's a medication interaction. Maybe after starting a new medication, you're starting to see these signs, and it could be related. So wouldn't we want to rule out anything that's not dementia? So that's, again, another important reason for early detection. And then it also allows for legal, financial, and care planning. if a person does have Alzheimer's or dementia, we want to engage them in as much planning ahead of time as possible, because through the progression of the disease, they might get to a point when they're not able to contribute to that decision-making process. So we want to engage them early on. And then along that line, it ensures that the voice of the person with dementia is heard, their wishes are known, and so that the family can carry out those wishes. And then it also encourages the person to see a specialist, maybe participate in a clinical trial. And we know that there have been some exciting pieces of news in the era of treatment of Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. And so some of those treatments, they're only for those that are in the very early stages of the disease. So the earlier we can get a diagnosis, maybe the more likely they will be to be eligible for those types of treatments. And we know the first cure for Alzheimer's disease will come out of a clinical trial. So it could be a great way to engage in the research community and help us work towards a future where there's no longer Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Why I think it's so hard to talk about this disease is there's so many myths, so many misconceptions that still exist about Alzheimer's and other dementias. And so sometimes that's why people don't want to go get a diagnosis. They think, well, there's no cure, there's no medication to help, so why would I even seek it out? That's too depressing, I can't handle it. But there are, again, some myths out there. One of them being that life ends after a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or other dementia. And that is not true. In my job, I've had the great fortune of interacting with a lot of people that are living with the disease at various conferences and meetings that I go to. And so many of them are living with meaning and purpose. It might just look different than what they had envisioned pre-diagnosis, but they're finding ways to have a very meaningful life. Also, another myth out there is that having dementia means that you're going to end up in a facility or a nursing home. I feel like in so much of popular media, that's how dementia is displayed. Somebody in a nursing home, in a wheelchair, sad, distressed. And that's not true. Majority of people living with Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia live at home, and they can live at home for an extended period of time in a way that is safe and comfortable and familiar. They can create a supportive environment at home. A lot of our home instead caregivers, care professionals, they support people living with dementia and Alzheimer's disease in their homes. And so, again, there's a lot of supports that can help to debunk that myth. And then the third myth that's common is that caring for someone with the disease will be impossible and overwhelming. And as a caregiver, you might be thinking, yeah, there are days that are like that. But the reality also is that there are a lot of resources and supports to help you along your caregiving journey. At Home Instead, we have a lot of great resources. I'll share some of those with you in just a few slides. But again, we need to reframe Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. It's not all doom and gloom. There is hope. You can live a life of meaning and purpose. It doesn't take away from the fact that it is a hard disease to watch someone that you know and love go through, especially with the decline, the progression of the disease. But again, we're seeing that by reducing our risk, we can prevent or delay the onset, meaning more good days in our older years, or these new treatments. If they're started early enough in the disease process, they can kind of delay the decline. Again, more good days, more days filled with meaning and purpose. And I want to just further emphasize that you can live well with dementia. This is Dr. Cynthia Hummel. She and I have had many interactions. She is living with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias, and she has found a creative outlet. She makes these masks that they're pieces of art that describe the different feelings of having dementia, living with dementia. So she has found that, along with a lot of other creative outlets that give her life a lot of meaning and purpose. And there's a lot of support out there. You're not alone. You're not in this alone. It might feel like it, but there's a lot of great support out there. Also, you can engage in those clinical trials and be part of this era of treatment and hopefully soon a cure. You can also become an advocate. Organizations like the Alzheimer's Association or Us Against Alzheimer's or Dementia Alliance International, these are all advocacy organizations that someone living with dementia can engage in to further the research and the supports that are available for those living with the disease. You can also still make goals and plans for the future. Create that bucket list and check things off. You can explore new hobbies like Cynthia did with her artwork. You can find strategies to maintain independence. I know in my conversation with Cynthia, I asked her, what are some things you do to stay independent? And she kind of has this whole system of notes and a designated area of her home where she puts things that she needs for the next day, and it helps her stay independent. She's still living alone in her own home, which is pretty incredible. And then you can continue to focus on current skills and abilities instead of what has been lost. I think sometimes we're quick to focus again on that negative instead of, reframing our mindset to the positive. And so again, you can still live really well with Alzheimer's. There'll be new challenges. You might have to find new ways of doing things, but you can find that meaning and purpose with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. And then I wanted to, before I go into some resources, end with some tips for caregivers. We've talked a lot about those that are caring for someone living with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia or other disease states. And it's important for caregivers to prepare the environment, set the environment up for success. On our Home Instead website, we have some great tools and resources for this. We have a home safety checklist that helps you go through each area of the home to make sure it's set up for success. We also have a video series on home safety specific to Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. And then we also have a home care solution guide. Hiring a home care company to come into the home to provide extra support can help alleviate some of the caregiving responsibilities on your plate, or simply just give you a break so you can engage in some of these brain healthy activities. You can also learn more about the diagnosis and care tips. Again, on our website, we have a lot of great resources on this. And then you can plan ahead as much as possible for future care needs and involve the person you're caring for in those conversations. You can also join a support group, again, so you don't feel as isolated, or there's a lot of online communities. We have a Facebook page called Remember for Alzheimer's. It is a great community. We provide information and resources, and caregivers are sharing tips back and forth. It's really quite incredible. I learned so much from that caregiving community. So there's ways to plug in. But my last tip for caregivers is prioritize your own brain health, because again, you might be at an increased risk of cognitive decline in later life. And if you're caring for someone, you might be watching them go through this journey of cognitive decline. And so you might be thinking to yourself, what can I do to reduce my risk so I don't have to go through that? Or maybe prevent it for as long as possible. And it's these 6 tips that we've gone over today. Exercise, eating right, prioritizing sleep, reducing our stress, engaging our brains and continuing to learn, and I'm probably forgetting one. I think it was the manage stress and relax. But again, go back to that worksheet and really take some time to think about little ways that you can engage in brain healthy activities. I wanted to share some resources. We have them here on the slide. Our Home Instead website has great resources and information. I host a podcast called Caregiver Chats, and you can find it on Apple or Spotify, or just search on any of your favorite podcast platforms for Caregiver Chats, and it'll pop up. Our friends at Hilarity for Charity, HFC, has a great brain health universe. Our friends at Us Against Alzheimer's have a great website. They're a wonderful advocacy organization. They also have Brain Guide, which is a website that kind of helps you walk through an assessment if you think you or a loved one has some cognitive decline. And it'll ask you some questions and give you some thoughts on maybe some next steps to take. Also, the Alzheimer's Association, I mentioned them before. They have some great resources, a lot of support groups, online and in person. And then for those that maybe have a loved one with another type of dementia, there is an association for frontotemporal degeneration, or FTD. That is what Bruce Willis has been diagnosed with. You've probably seen that in public media. And then there's Lewy Body Dementia Association. That's another type of dementia. And that website has some great resources specific to that type of dementia. For our Canadian and global friends, we also have a Canadian version of our website. There's also the Alzheimer's Society of Canada and Women's Brain Health Initiative that have some great resources. Women's Brain Health, while it says just women, it really, all of their information can apply to everyone. Some great information there, along with Brain Canada Foundation. And then on the international front, Alzheimer's Disease International, they put out that World Alzheimer's Report that I mentioned. Feel free to go to their website, download that report. It goes even deeper into risk reduction and all the different aspects. I think they have up to 12. I just focused on 6 today. So if you really want to geek out on this, I encourage you to go there. And then Dementia Alliance International, DAI. That is an organization of people living with dementia. It's a community. They put out some great resources and information. They support one another. So again, if you know someone living with the disease, that is a great resource to help them feel connected, to provide them an outlet for advocacy. So that wraps up today's presentation. Wow, we have covered so much information. I am just delighted that you have joined me today, that you're thinking about your brain health. Continue to do that checkup from the neck up that we talked about. Continue to implement these small things in your life. Again, it doesn't have to be anything big or grand, but also it's never too early, never too late. So if you are a parent of young children, you can start to teach them about brain health. Or maybe you're a retiree and starting to rethink about how you're spending your time or little things you want to do to engage. Or maybe you're someone living with dementia. You can still engage in these brain healthy activities to keep your mind active and your body active. So I hope that no matter where you are in life, no matter what your role is, I hope that you found today's workshop to be helpful. We welcome you again to share this workshop out with anyone that may have missed it. The recording will be made available on our YouTube channel, and we encourage you to stay in touch with us. Follow us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can search our website for resources and information and for in-home care services near you. So again, our website's homeinstead.com. My name is Lakelyn. I am so grateful that you have joined us today, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your World Alzheimer's Day. Take good care. We'll see you next time.